it's been a very interesting juxtaposition. I was at the opener at Northwestern. It's near my house up here in the northern side of Chicago, and that was about as low as you can get. And since then, it's been explosiveness. It's been youngsters growing up quickly on defense. Elijah Holder with the pick six to get things started off in the UCLA game. I mean, it's been the defensive line, surviving the loss of Harrison Phillips and then finding a little bit of health and consistency over the last 5 weeks. It's the linebacker core continuing to do damage. Behind Blake Martinez leading the Pac-12 in tackles. And Peter Colombayi was just an absolute terror. He was in the UCLA backfield all night last Thursday. Whom have I not spoken of yet? Kevin Hogan, who leads the Pac-12 quarterbacks in efficiency ranking by like 40 points. I mean, it's absurd what he's done since Pac-12 play has started. And, of course, the nation's all-purpose yardage leader, Christian McCaffrey, who has just been dynamic, electric. I'm running out of adjectives to describe the kid. He's absolutely killing it.
Yeah, by the time Hogan decided to make a mistake, it was a third-quarter interception. The game was well in hand. So, Don, you bring up Christian McCaffrey. I don't know if you're prepared to answer this question, but would you vote him for the Heisman Trophy right now?
No, but he'd be in New York. I'd have him in the ceremony. I don't know how you would vote many people other than Fournette right now, because I am just not convinced that LSU team is any good, and he's just killing people, and he's over 1,000 yards already, and he's ridiculous. I'm not sure McCaffrey couldn't do something similar where he not returning and selling hot dogs at halftime and doing everything else for the Stanford Cardinal. He might be the leading rusher in the nation if he just focused on being, just a running back. But he's so versatile and he's so good. But it's early, and I don't think he'd even be my pick yet. But I got to tell you, he keeps doing what he's doing. He's going to be in the conversation at the end of the season. There's no question.
Mike, the moratorium has been lifted. So UCLA for a second consecutive week will play on a Thursday night after what we witnessed last Thursday in Palo Alto. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not. The coaches and the players usually like to say, hey, we want to get back on the field and erase what happened last weekend. But considering, wow, that was a little demoralizing. On top of it, the injuries continue to mount.
Yeah, definitely. UCLA had 5 injuries in that game. One, they had another a wide receiver go down with a season-ending injury. So that's 5 total. 5, I think it is. Still 5.
It's
more
brutal.
than one is more than enough. And then two of the injuries were to the offensive line. Left tackle Connor McDermott, key piece, and then right guard Alex Redmond. So it's like, what else do you have for us, college football gods? What are you going to bring us this week? So, and the fact that looking at the schedule before it came out, we knew that this was going to be an odd stretch with the Stanford game on Thursday, and then a week later, a Thursday game with Cal. And it's turning out to be a little weird. Now, last week it seemed we could handle it because 7:30 kickoff, it's fine. Everyone can get home, settle in, watch the game as it were, and not a lot of Bruin fans wanted to watch the game, after halftime, but still. But then now you have a 6 p.m. Pacific time kickoff at the Rose Bowl versus Cal. The Rose Bowl is not going to be full. It's going to be very weird, and it's supposed to be their back in black alternate jersey game. So it's weird trying to muster up excitement for this, especially after a 2-game loss, all these injuries, so many issues during the Stanford game, and sorry, Don, I'm going to be a little nitpicky here, but we had so many complaints about Stanford holding, but that did not cause UCLA to lose the game. UCLA had dumb penalties again. The play calling was atrocious. The week before against Arizona State, offensive coordinator Noel Mazzoni said he was too conservative. He wanted to pass the ball around a little bit more. Against Stanford, he went the opposite direction and started passing everywhere and almost forgot about Paul Perkins, who only had
Right.
14 carries for the game.
Yeah, I know. He was only last season's leading rusher in the conference.
Exactly. It's
I don't know how you forget about that guy.
The ball needs to be in his hands, and it's good that Rosen was actually pretty solid. He had some
No,
mistakes.
he wasn't bad.
That first pick six, and nobody touched the Stanford defender. I forget who it was, but
It was
just
Holder. Yeah, nobody. He waltzed
beautiful
into the
move.
end zone. Yep.
Yeah, there's nobody touched him. So that after that, UCLA got a little bit comfortable, but Stanford just does what Stanford does to UCLA, and overall it was just brutal to watch again. But you got to hand it to Stanford. Personally, I like the fact that after all these years, the last decade or so of all these spread offenses dominating the Pac-12. Look at who the two top teams are, Stanford and Utah. We're playing traditional power football, and not to say that it's coming back. It never left. Kyle Whittingham.
Yep.
He's never been in the top half of the South Division, and now look at him. Things are falling into place, and they're just smashing people. I thought the Arizona State Utah game was going to be a little bit closer, but for the most part, Utah did what I expected them to do, especially late in the game. And just between them and Stanford, it's going to be very interesting going into the second half and seeing how certain teams are going to try to bounce back. UCLA, USC, Arizona, and Arizona State. Yeah. And then up in the north, Washington State. We're probably going to get into all that, but I love the fact that that these power teams are coming up and showing that power football is not dead.
Hey Shane, Mike leads us to an interesting place. Can you give us a feel for the evolution of this Utah football program? This has been a really good football program, and sometimes on the fringe of elite over the last 10 years. But joining the Pac-12 was a bit of a rough ride initially, but it hasn't taken long, a la TCU in the Big 12, to catch up to the big boys and in many instances surpass them.
Well, I don't think it's any coincidence that in year 5 year 4 last year technically on a 9-4 season that Utah started to, really have some consistent success. It coincides with having a full recruiting cycle of athletes from Pac-12 recruiting classes.
Yep.
So Utah's depth has started to fill up. There was never any question that Utah's number ones could compete with anybody else in the country. The question was the 2 and 3s able to, and as we learned, when Utah had some attrition in their first, frankly, 2 to 3 seasons of the conference, that they didn't have that depth. Now that depth has basically come to fruition. And if you look at all across Utah's roster, senior quarterback, senior running back, upperclassmen offensive line, upperclassmen all across the defense. It's just like with any Pac-12 program. You're going to have all kinds of cycles where you're going to have upperclassmen cycle through. That's when your peak should happen, and your valley should happen when you're trying to reload, if you will. Then Utah's at that peak right now. The question is, how are they going to reload? Now the recruiting class is looking pretty solid. Yeah. But that's all what it's going to come down to, as Kyle Whittingham and any coach says with across the country. Recruiting is the lifeblood of college football, and you also have to coincide that with health. The Pac-12 conference is all about who survives the attrition. Utah's a healthy team right now. UCLA's not. Arizona's not. Oregon's had their struggles with health. So it's all about who's the healthiest at the end of the season. It's a really simple formula, frankly.
Yeah, and let me add to that, Shane. To me, the difference I see between Utah this year and last year versus the 2 or 3 years prior is not necessarily at the skill positions. It's in the trenches. It's both the offensive and the defensive line, and to your point, having some depth behind those big bodies, and really being able to slug it out. I mean, you watch a Utah game now, and they're just hitting people in the mouth. And the ASU game I thought was a perfect example. Stolen signs notwithstanding, but fourth quarter, the Utah line was just blowing ASU off the ball, and Booker was able to, as you put it, get loose. So I think it's really about the depth and the strength in the trenches. Yes, it has to do with those several recruiting cycles and also being able to hang the Pac-12 banner and attract people who otherwise might have gone and sat on the bench at another big conference school as opposed to Utah back in the Mountain West days.
Well, Don, you bring up the Big 12 banner and the Big 12 or the Pac-12 banner, and unfortunately, under this system of a college football playoff, you could have the best conference and you could have a bunch of 9-3 teams at the top. Now, Utah is in a position right now, especially with the schedule setting up fairly well, that they might be able to continue this run, get to the Pac-12 championship game, finish it off, and even with one loss, get there. As could Stanford if they're able to do the same thing. What I'm getting at is that would you rather have this carnage ensue as it has outside of Utah, Don, or have one or two teams separate themselves to set up the conference well for the playoff committee?
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a brutal question. It's just we could get really esoteric about balance and when there's less predictability, and I think we have that in spades this season. So yeah, Utah could very easily get there. I could totally see that. I'll put it this way: Utah will not finish the regular season with more than one loss, and that one loss is going to be somewhat unexpected if it happens, and I'm not positive that it will. That is still the most complete team in the Pac-12, in my opinion. I think Stanford is going to be favored in every game the rest of the way, according to the ESPN Football Power Index. So it has a pretty decent shot of running the table, but again, health and other things notwithstanding. And there's some good teams, on that schedule. Cal, rivalry game. It's at Stanford Stadium. Who cares? Locale doesn't matter a lot. Notre Dame is really good, and they're going to come in on the last weekend. So, there's some challenges ahead for both of those programs, but I still find it more interesting this way versus you have two teams that are just running away in one division or in each of the divisions, and everybody else is struggling. The thing that intrigues me the most this week, just cruising up and down the Pac-12 schedule, you've got 4-2 Washington State at 5-2 Arizona. Now, tell me you thought that was going to happen before the season started. That's great from where I sit. I think it's really good and it's really fun and it's really encouraging. And the Utah and Stanford programs, you want to get to the playoff? Well, you better not slip up, guys. You better make it happen. But this thing is designed, and there's definitely a sense of scarcity. Every week matters in the regular season right now in college football, and that adds to the excitement from where I sit. So as a Pac-12 fan, does it make me uneasy? Little. As a college football fan, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great to watch. It's great to witness. It's unpredictable. That makes it more entertaining. But from the standpoint of carrying the banner, to your point, I don't think there's any question. You can back up your point very easily. If I look at the Big Ten, it's what I expected to be. Outside of Michigan, obviously jumping up and being a legitimate top 10 to 15 team, Ohio State, Michigan State, they're the two best teams. Yep. Sure, Iowa's going to probably represent the West, but they're going to get their rear ends kicked, most likely.
Yeah, good point.
The ACC is a one-game season. It's Clemson, Florida State. Again, like the Big Ten, the winner of that should handle the Coastal winner. Alabama owns the SEC, and regardless of all these really good teams in the SEC, Alabama's starting to emerge as the best team and really starting to lay lumber on everybody else. The Big 12, until Oklahoma can put its foot down and show up against the TCU or Baylor. That's a two-team league with TCU and Baylor. The Pac-12 completely different than the other four Power 5 conferences.
Totally agree.
So, Mike, let's get started for the weekend before I really want to hit up Shane on this USC game. So, Mike, you've got the kickoff again here on Thursday night with Cal and UCLA. Now, I checked out the line on this game a couple days ago. The Bruins, despite all the issues, and despite Cal with probably the best quarterback, or at least the most NFL-ready quarterback in college football, and a very much developed team over what we saw a couple years ago. So it's not just Jared Goff. They have the playmakers, and they have a better defense than advertised. Going to the Rose Bowl as an underdog. So what does UCLA need to do to get back on track here?
The first and foremost thing that Noel Mazzoni, the offensive coordinator, needs to do is get Paul Perkins the ball. None of this 14 carries a game thing. He needs to be upwards of 20 carries, especially since backup Nate Starks had a head injury last week. So, they have two really good yeah, two really good freshman running backs in Soso Jamabo and Bolo Olorunfumni. That's my boy right there. They're pretty solid running backs, but for the most part, Perkins is probably going to be doing it alone. And it's going to be interesting to see if the two offensive linemen that were hurt last week are going to be participating in this game. So big questions there. Mora hasn't said anything, or I haven't heard anything from the post-practice pressers. But that's that. No matter what's happening with the offensive line, you got to try to figure out a way to open up some lanes and let Paul Perkins do what he does best, just run the ball. Like I said earlier, they went a little pass happy. I like that. Rosen did really well, and the receivers, they did well when they could. Stanford's defense is just phenomenal, and they always have UCLA's number. But against Cal, not their defense, not as good as Stanford, but they've improved. That's one thing I was wondering about all season long is how is Cal's defense going to hold up this season? So if they can maybe do like 60% running, 40% passing, I think that might help out their chances on offense. On defense, the Bruins are just decimated. So, they got a lot of depth, but a lot of that is a lot of youth, very talented youth, but inexperienced too. Last week we saw some guys step in on defense, and they were just letting off their man. They were letting guys go. Stanford was just catching easy passes. They didn't give up a lot of long passes, but it was the short yardage passes that really killed UCLA's defense last week. And UCLA's run defense is atrocious right now. Eddie Vanderdoes was out for the season from the first game, so we're seeing now how vital he is. Him and Miles Jack too, because Miles Jack would be in the middle of the field running after people. Yep. And right now they have a lot of guys that are going to be excellent in the future, but right now they're still learning the system, and it's imperative that the coaches get them ready, but at the same time, they do need that in-game experience. They need that season-long experience. So, right now they're getting it, but there's still a lot of youth. So if they can, stop the run, because what I like what Cal's doing is, they have their bear raid offense, slinging the ball around to receiver after receiver. Jared Goff is amazing still. They've also been using their run game to open up that passing game. So, if they can, stifle the Cal's run game, they can probably do a little bit more damage, because UCLA's pass defense, I think I'm remembering this right, first in the Pac-12. So that's pretty impressive. That's one thing I've really liked about UCLA, despite all the injuries, is and because of all the injuries, they're mixing guys up. Safeties are playing cornerback, cornerbacks are playing nickelback, so they're moving people around. So that doesn't really help their chances. It doesn't help the chemistry, but for the most part, they're holding their own. And if they can really limit the Cal passing game, I think UCLA has more than a puncher's chance in this one. And it's going to be interesting too, because how many people are going to be at the Rose Bowl? Does UCLA really have a home field advantage? Cal hasn't beaten UCLA at the Rose Bowl since 2009, I think it is. So UCLA has had their number at home, but we've also seen UCLA has just, for some reason, not been themselves when they're playing at the Rose Bowl. So it's going to be Thursday nights, more wacky games on Thursday nights. So. And this is going to add to it. So, right now I think if UCLA, despite all the injury conference schedule, running the ball, getting Rosen slowly acclimated, I think they should be fine. But still, you just can't deny what the talent Jared Goff is.
Yeah.
Mike,
He's
what comes to mind when you tell me that UCLA's number one in the conference in pass defense? What comes to mind is nobody needs to throw the ball against them.
Oh yeah, no, I think everybody knows that. But that's going to be interesting, because all Cal does is not all they do, but that's what they're known for. Is they have a solid quarterback. Why not fling it? So it's going to be interesting to see what Cal does
Yep.
to attack the UCLA defense.
I'm guessing that those are not pass efficiency numbers, that those are total yardage numbers.
Yeah.
Regardless of UCLA being a bit down, Mike, give me this Pac-12 Thursday night every week. And I know we had a bad one last week, but the name brand was a great game. UCLA Stanford should have been a great game and would typically be most years. I'll take these Pac-12 games every week on a Thursday night over what we've been given in past years from the old Big East or the American Athletic Conference on Thursday nights and those kind of games, the ACC. I'll take these Pac-12 matchups, no doubt, on these Thursday nights. So Shane, we've got Utah at USC, Trojans at 3-3. We know how talented they are. We know the playmakers that they have, and even on defense, number one on the depth chart, the stars that they have. I find it interesting, and me to try to second-guess Vegas. This happens about once a week where I'm like, look at that line. That makes no sense. And throughout the season, I'm right about 3 times, and Vegas is the other 12 or 13 times. So Utah at USC, and you're like a 3-point underdog going to the Coliseum. Just your thoughts about this matchup.
Love it. I hope it goes from 3 points to 6 points. Please give Kyle Whittingham a reason to get this team up and ready to go. Just keep doing it. I've been going back and forth on this in my mind quite a bit. I can see where Vegas is coming from. It's USC. They're at the Coliseum. The glitz and glamour of the Trojans, 5-star athletes everywhere. But then I think on the other side, it's like, well, hold on a second. They have the number 3 ranked undefeated team coming into the Coliseum that beat USC last year. So, I mean, the whole point of them to set these lines is to get money coming in one way or the other. So I'm not sure what to make of it. Like I said, I hope it keeps going up. But the question is, with USC, where are they mentally right now? Obviously, they went and lost a big game at Notre Dame. And talk about one of the strangest post-game reactions I've ever seen from a team after a loss. I mean, a lot of the USC players are smiling. They were upbeat. And I just kept thinking, like, wait, you guys just lost to your rival. You should be ticked off. And but I didn't interpret it that way. So the question is, which team are we going to get on Saturday afternoon down at the Coliseum with a replacement coach? The key is Utah's got to go in there and just kind of stomp out their hopes and their dreams early on and not let them get rolling. Yep. And Utah can do that. I mean, Utah, since they've came into the conference, a lot of people are kind of wondering, well, now you're playing the big boys every week. You're going to get, the big guys, and you're going to start seeing that logo across the field. Well, ever since Utah's joined the conference, the first conference game they played was against USC, and they've not been scared of the Trojans one time. They actually arguably should have won more than one of those matchups. Yeah. So Utah's not scared of the Trojans, regardless of how many 5-star athletes they got on that side of the ball. Utah right now, from top to bottom, without a doubt, is the better football team. Now, there's a couple players they just have to keep their eyes on and make sure that don't negate that. One of them is Adoree Jackson. That guy just absolutely terrifies me to no end. And it sounds like they're going to put him on the offensive side of the ball a whole lot more this week. Now, fortunately, Utah has a whole bunch of corners they can throw at him, and they can get pretty creative and try to mass coverages and stuff like that to really kind of throw off USC's offense. Now, also, it seems like Sac Lake City has kind of reemerged over the last coming weeks. So with USC having some problems in terms of their offensive line, they lost one of their best offensive linemen just 2 weeks ago with a torn ACL. So Utah is going to make sure they can get Cody Kessler on his rear end. They're going to go after him like crazy and see if they can force him in some turnovers. And as we come to know with Kessler, he's a very efficient quarterback, and he's going to get his yards. The problem with him is with games against better competition, he's not the touchdown throwing machine that he's more so in the preseason or the non-conference. So I'm not all that scared of USC's offense that much, but I'm terrified of Adoree Jackson, obviously Juju Smith-Schuster, but I think Utah's going to throw the kitchen sink at these guys defensively. And then offensively, after what we saw from Notre Dame last week, I just hand the ball to number 23 and say, go. Because it sounds like they don't want to stop a running back. And if you're going to give the ball to Devontae Booker 30 times, Utah finds themselves in pretty good shape. And I think would probably cover the spread.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no better way to beat down a team that maybe isn't necessarily demoralized or going to mail it in initially, but to beat them down carry after carry after carry with one of the best and most brutal backs in college football. By the fourth quarter, you might take all the will out of USC. Kessler, as you mentioned here, Shane, for a guy who threw 39 touchdowns and 5 picks, who had statistically one of the better seasons we've seen in recent college football history. Yeah, the splits, good competition versus bad, are dramatic when it comes to Cody Kessler. And I'll allude to something that Mike was talking about concerning his UCLA Bruins playing at the Rose Bowl in front of a deflated crowd. That Coliseum home field advantage isn't going to be much of one, I don't think. We've already seen them lose to Washington and Stanford in recent weeks at the LA Coliseum, so that I don't think is going to be much of a factor, except
Well,
Utah's not going to be at home.
I'd expect a lot of Utah fans down in Los Angeles. There's a huge alumni base down there, and Utah fans travel very, very well, especially since joining this conference. So there might be a different shade of red that you'll see rivaling the USC shade there in the Coliseum on Saturday night.
I approve.
I agree.
Very true.
Yeah,
Very
Can
true.
I add this really quickly about the coaching? I mean, this is exact. With Steve Sarkisian, we always saw that he never could have a good second half. He just never adjusted, and we kind of saw the same thing with USC kind of melting down at Notre Dame. So. I thought it was a little absurd for USC to be favored in this game because Utah is just stacked. They are the team to beat right now in the South Division. So I mean, honestly, I would not be surprised if Utah wins by 3 touchdowns or something like that. Kyle Whittingham he has his team disciplined. They're well prepared, and USC is a hot mess. I'm not trying to rail on them because they're a rival, but it's just and it's not just this year. It just seems like a pattern. And that we could write books on that. But right now, USC is in some heavy transition, and I just do not see USC being that close to what Utah's doing. I mean, it's just insane how good the Utes are this year.
Okay, I'm going to be slightly surprised if either team wins this by double digits. I think it's going to be a fairly close game, but I'm fairly confident as well that Utah is going to win.
I'm where you are, Mark.
We'll pitch it to Don.
Yeah.
And let's start going through the games and get our predictions in. And whatever you guys weren't able to say in regards to any of these matchups, weave those into the predictions, and we'll go through them right here. So we'll start on a Thursday night, of course, with Jared Goff and Cal 5-1. In the midst, regardless of the one loss that looks really good on the road by 6 points despite the 5 interceptions, going to UCLA to take on the Bruins at the Rose Bowl. So, Don, your thoughts about the Golden Bears taking on the Bruins?
Yeah, honestly, I think this is going to be a fantastic football game. To me, this has all the earmarks of the conference game of the week. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be fun to watch. I think a lot of points are going to be scored. And I think UCLA rises up and wins this game at the end. Cal's defense is better. There's just no question about that. Goff is perhaps a transcendent quarterback talent. I mean, he really could be the next Aaron Rodgers when he gets to the next level. The guy is a fantastic player. And there are lots of much better pieces around him. But I like UCLA at home in this one. I'll put it like this. They've had 2 bad losses. There was footage on ESPN last Thursday night of Coach Moore running the steps at Stanford Stadium, as is his tradition. I'm guessing there were quite a few UCLA Bruins running some stadium steps, this past week at practice, and they probably don't want to do that anymore. So I think they're going to come out kind of fired up, and I think they're going to play well, and I think they're going to get back on the winning track. I think there's too much talent top to bottom on UCLA's roster. Yeah, I know they've got the injuries. Yes, there are difficulties. But I think they're going to put together a solid game, and I think they get the win at home. I do expect it to be a close game. I do expect it to be highly entertaining. But I like UCLA in that one.
Yes, a wounded animal, an embarrassed animal can be very, very dangerous. We've seen it time and time again. All right, Mike, your Bruins are at home against Cal on Thursday night.
I agree with everything that Don says. I have a feeling this is going to be a shootout, very close game. I wouldn't doubt if one of the teams wins by 1. Although I'm choosing UCLA because same deal. You lose 2 games, and you obviously don't want that third. They're not out of the South Division race, although it's going to be really tough to try to capture it, especially since UCLA has Utah, second to last game of the season. But going back to this game on Thursday night, I think it's going to be entertaining. The 2 good quarterbacks, both have some solid receivers. Weird Thursday nights, always seem to rear their head, and I think the Bruins are just going to be a little bit more motivated. Losing 2 in a row, you don't want to do that. I'm sure they went back to the film and checked every little detail about what they need to improve against Cal. UCLA has been a little bit luckier against Cal than they have Stanford, so.
Yeah.
It's not a mentality of can we finally beat them? It's we beat them before, let's beat them again. Let's make sure that our season is we still have a chance for the South Division, and Mora's pretty good. I don't know why he can't beat David Shaw. I don't know why there's just no fight there, but Mora's really good at making adjustments and bouncing back. Injuries are going to be an issue. There's still depth, but this should be a really good game. I got UCLA.
Yeah, this is outlandish thinking, but I follow the logic here because I'm going to go off of what you just said. If UCLA is just looking for an 8-4 record to get to a bowl game, they don't want to play Utah, obviously, because they're most likely going to lose. But that is the path to get back into the race, and they do have Utah, and if they can get somebody else to knock off the Utes, then they got the head-to-head to get back into the race and win the division. There's a lot of work to be done before that can happen, but it's possible. Other than the other alternative would be, hey, let's just we've already played them, lost to them, let's move on. But so they've got it within their sights. All right, Shane, we've got UCLA hosting Cal on Thursday night.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Both the other guys had a bunch of great points. I'm going to go with Cal in this game, though. They've had an extra week to prepare, and UCLA has to find something on defense, or else Jared Goff is just going to have a day. Not only that, as Mike alluded to, Cal will run the ball, and they should have Daniel Lasco healthy. And for somehow, somewhere, Cal always finds these really squirrely, really quick running backs that can gash people really quickly. Not only that, don't overlook Cal's secondary. Their corners are very, very fast, and they're very, very good in terms of coming up with turnovers, with interceptions. They're very opportunistic. I think it's a very, very close game. But I feel like this is the kind of game that kind of comes down to the last drive, and then that's where I would give the advantage to Goff opposed to Rosen, who's the true freshman, who's had some true freshman moments. I mean, he's played very, very well, no doubt about it. But when it comes to getting that final stop, I'm not sure if UCLA can get that final stop to stop Goff and his plethora of wide receivers and that extra week of preparation.
To confirm the point Don was making a few minutes ago, and I definitely confirmed, was that when I do the other conference shows that I do, I look at the game matchups, and I usually pick out about 3 that are pretty obvious who the favorite is, who most people are going to pick, and instead of wasting the time of having everyone pick the game, I just say, raise your hand if I'm wrong here and you don't think Iowa State is going to lose to Baylor. For example, here I have to get all the picks because I have no idea who you guys are going to take in these games because they're generally evenly matched, and this is almost across the board each week in the Pac-12. So, Shane, we'll stay with you where we go with Washington State, and as Don alluded to, 2 very impressive wins in conference considering what we thought the Cougars were, and they go to Arizona to take on another 2-2 team, 5-2 overall in Arizona.
Oh, man. Flip a coin with this one. I honestly have no idea. I'll go with the home team. I'll go with Arizona. But I could see Washington State going in there and dropping 60 points and winning. But the loss of Scooby Wright for Arizona is just huge. It's ginormous. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to put it.
Yep.
The question is Nick Wilson healthy? For Arizona, he wasn't healthy that last week, but last week his backup ran for 200 yards. So Anu Solomon's playing really, really well. I'm going to take Arizona by a field goal. This is a 63-60 type of game. But I wouldn't be shocked if Wazoo went down to the desert and got the win.
Yep, great
Hey,
pick.
Mike, when all was well in UCLA in Bruinland way back when you whipped up on Arizona, you got to see the Wildcats up close and personal and evaluate that game. So we got the Wildcats hosting Washington State.
It's Arizona actually did have a really good running game. They actually destroyed UCLA's run defense despite UCLA being up by 2 or 3 touchdowns. But they've kind of bounced back. They had a 2-game losing streak to start their conference season, and now they're back in it basically. They're above Colorado, USC, and UCLA, so they're in good position. I think they're maybe a game behind Utah or half a game behind Utah, something like that. So they're still alive, and they need to know that they can do some damage. Now, can they do that against a surprising Washington State team, which I've been as shocked as anybody? They've been playing some really good football. Mike Leach has really turned things around, and if anything, he's just tightened the screws a bit and finally got his players to do what he wants in his system. So if they play disciplined football, like Shane said, they could go down and shock the Wildcats in Arizona. But I think Arizona, they do have some good home field advantage. So I believe it's gonna be a close game too, another Pac-12 shootout. But I got Arizona in this one.
What do you say here, Don? Washington State goes to Arizona.
Shane took my narrative word for word. Zona's favored by a little over a touchdown. I don't see any way this game goes more than a touchdown margin. I like Arizona because of the home field, but I like them, in a really tight game by a field goal. And 63-60 sounds about right. And frankly, that would just be a blast to watch. So I really hope it happens.
Don, we'll stay with you for another game that could be a blast to watch that means absolutely nothing in regards to division races when you talk about Colorado at 0-3 in the conference, but much improved.
Way better.
Oregon State that looked formidable a few weeks back and just not in recent weeks. So Oregon State's hosting Colorado.
I'm going to take Colorado on the road. I like the Buffs. And it's exactly the point you mentioned. They have been playing much better. Oregon State has not yet pulled it all together relative to where we thought they would be. They had a solid performance actually against a very good Michigan team on the road. Looked good against Stanford for a quarter and a half anyway. Before that one started to get out of hand. But they have been struggling mightily, and until they start to figure things out, I have a hard time picking them. Give me the Buffs.
Okay. Mike, what do you think about this Colorado game at Oregon State?
Kind of weird because they're two of the cellar dwellers in the North and South division. So, who's the one that's gonna come up on this one? I think they've both improved a little bit, but I kind of like Colorado. I like where they're going, and I like how they're handling themselves after the last 2 seasons. So I got Colorado in this one simply because I think they're going to be ready. I like their confidence, and I think Oregon State just needs maybe another season or two to get acclimated to Gary Anderson. But right now, I think Colorado has a bit of an edge.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, Shane. Couple teams that Utah's going to see down the road.
Yeah, one is our rival. The other is full of former Utah coaches. I'm going to go with the Buffs for all the reasons listed above, just because they're making nice strides. They're getting there. Oregon State, Coach Anderson up there, he's just going through a complete rebuild, trying to rebuild not only the talent, but also just the psyche of the program, just the thought process, the whole 9 yards. Coach Kalani Sitake in the defensive unit, they're trying to install Coach Whittingham's defense up there. It's going to take them a while to get the horses up there for that. Their quarterback is intriguing, Seth Collins. He can make some plays. They got some good wide receivers. But all in all, it's hard to say, but I'm going to go with the Buffs in this one.
Yeah. Your designated rival by the Pac-12.
Thank
So
you.
funny. Love the air quotes on that. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
Shane, we'll stay with you. We'll talk this Stanford-Washington game. We didn't talk too much about the Huskies' disappointing loss against Oregon. That was a game that we thought could go either way, but that the Huskies may pull out. That drops them to 3-3. But they've played pretty well this year. But this Stanford deal, this could be a different game for the Huskies.
Yeah, this is going to be. There's going to be a lot of hard hits in this game. There's going to be some people knocked out. I'll go with Stanford because I think without a doubt, as of right now, they're the class of the North. But I think they're going to have to earn whatever points they get because Washington's going to hit them in the mouth.
Agree.
The question is, can Washington score points? And I really don't think so, especially if they're going to their backup quarterback. I just think Stanford's just going to. It's going to be a close game, probably be a half, 3/4. But at some point, Washington's just going to get, demoralized because they can't score, and Stanford will eventually pull out a comfortable win.
Yeah, I can't add much to that. I've watched the Huskies play 2 or 3 times, and they will hit people. They show up and they play rugged defense and they get after people and they are sure tacklers. It's typically ugly football because they're not real pretty on offense, Mike. So you got Washington going to Stanford to take on the red-hot Cardinal.
Yeah, I think Washington's kind of in the same boat as UCLA in that regard. Especially, I think it'll be a similar game to UCLA Stanford, where I love Washington's defense. They just don't have much of an offense, not much firepower. And with a disciplined team like Stanford, I think they're just gonna, the Cardinal are just gonna roll over Washington. It'll be a fight. Definitely, Washington is not gonna just let the Huskies. They're not going to let the Cardinal roll over them, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see, maybe for the first 3/4, and then Stanford's just going to run away with it.
Yeah.
Watch out for some special teams. Watch out for some shenanigans from Chris Peterson, though.
Yep.
Guarantee he's going to throw some crazy stuff out there that's going to make this game just completely entertaining.
Yep.
Any concerns, Don?
Not really. This game to me has 19-5 written all over it. I can see Washington getting a field goal and a safety. They are going to try some interesting special team stuff, but I'll tell you, the special teams discipline has been pretty impressive for Stanford, and I expect that to continue. They've shown really good discipline in sniffing stuff out and smothering it before it gets out of hand. I think they're going to come in on high alert, and I just don't think Washington's offense is going to be able to get anything done. That defense is wicked, though. I think this one could easily be like a 7-3 halftime score. I do think Stanford pulls away a little and probably wins by a couple of scores down the stretch. But I don't think this is going to be any kind of a high-scoring blowout at all. I
And
think
the spread on
both
this game,
defenses are too
what
good.
about 17?
You know what's interesting? I haven't been able to find one.
Oh, you know why you can find one? Jake Browning.
Because of the quarterback.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to find a spread anywhere, so I have no idea what it is. Kind of flying blind on that one. I guess the wise guys don't know what to make of it either.
Yeah, I looked at that yesterday, and Jake Browning, his health in question has removed the line for now. All right, Don, let's stay with you for the big one with Utah and USC playing at the Coliseum.
Yeah, I can't wait to see this game. I think it has huge implications. I think USC shows up yet again. I think the smiles that were referred to at the end of the Notre Dame game a little earlier, I think they were just relieved to be playing football and not answering questions about, well, is your head coach a drunk or was he a drunk and what happened and what did you see and what did you know when? I think they were just glad to be on a football field even if they came up a little bit short. I think USC shows up. I think they play well. I think they play hard, and I think they lose. I've got Utah on this one. They're just too good and too complete. They travel well. I do agree with Shane's take that there are going to be a ton of Utah faithful in the Coliseum. So I think it's going to be about as loud for them as it is for USC. They're just too good a team. They're going to grind them down and they're going to beat them.
Mike, I don't think I need to take a wild guess on this one based on your comments earlier about the Utes and the Trojans.
Yeah, I just think Utah is just a solid team, a lot more complete than what USC is. I mean, USC doesn't have a lot of injuries, but they have a lot of mental stuff going on, and I think that is, it's been clouding them a little bit. But yeah, I think it's going to be very solid, very very close game. But I honestly, I would not be surprised if Utah wins this by 20 points. It's
Could happen.
USC has some really good players, and you guys, I think Don talked about Cody Kessler, how he's preseason, he's going to be a Heisman candidate and all this, and he shows up in the conference games, he plays cupcakes, but then once he gets in against proper defenses, things just start to go awry, and it doesn't help that Max Turek, their center, is done for the season. So I can see Utah just licking their chops, just looking at Kessler and saying, "I'm coming for you, buddy." But I just think Utah's just way too good right now.
Agree.
Yeah, I didn't see the Notre Dame game, but I've got to credit USC for going across country, playing what we would guess to be one of the 10 or 15 best teams in the country, and leading in the fourth quarter before things went awry. Did not see that game. Would have loved to have seen it and see what Shane saw late in the game or after the final whistle with USC players smiling. Like Don said, could just been relieved to, hey, get out here and compete and play hard and put up a good effort, or maybe they were just felt good that they hung with a really good team. I don't know, but Shane, we've got the Utes going for 7-0 against the USC team that's 3-3, but still favored at the Coliseum.
Yeah, another week, another tough opponent, regardless of their record. USC, no matter what you say, I mean, they have studs all over the field. Now, a lot of those studs are, just barely out of diapers and just barely get on campus. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the Utes in this one. This team is extremely laser focused right now. I alluded to all the leadership that they have on this team, and the leadership is just zeroed in, and they have some pretty big goals in mind. If they can give USC another loss and eliminate them basically from the South and give them another step towards clinching the South and clinching a possibility in the Pac-12 championship game, that's what this team is focused on right now. And not only that, don't forget that there's a ton of Utah players from Southern California. So as it is for a lot of teams around the conference, whenever opposing teams go into Southern California, they want to go prove a point. They want to go prove a point that, hey, why didn't you recruit me, USC? Travis Wilson's from up the road. Kenneth Scott's from up the road. A lot of players from around there are on this Utah roster. So Utah's going to go in there. It's going to be scary. I'm not going to dance around that. I'm more scared about USC than I was ASU a week ago, just because USC can explode at any given second. But I think Utah's defense holds them in check. I think Utah's defense gets maybe a score. And they just have to keep the ball away from Adoree Jackson. If they do that, they'll find themselves in good shape, and I see Utah winning by, 7 to 10 points.
Agree. Exactly.
Good stuff, guys. Pac-12 Breakdown every Wednesday, 11 o'clock Pacific Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Pacific Time. Don King of Last Word on Sports, Mike W.R. from Gojo Bruin, and Shane Roberts from Block U. Three of our regulars on here breaking down the Pac-12 like nobody's business. Guys, always appreciate the discussion. It's always a good time.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark.